Recorded. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us this evening for our launch of Disinformation Detectives, our Train the Trainer workshop, or how we like to affectionately call it, a workshop in a box. Very grateful to have you with us this evening. But before we begin, I want to respectfully and graciously recognize and acknowledge the relationship that First Nations, Inuit, Métis, all the beautiful First Nations across the country and Indigenous people have with this incredible land that we all live on and enjoy. I work for the Climate Reality Project Canada, and our office is located on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. CRPC honors, recognizes, and respects these nations as the traditional stewards of this beautiful land and these incredible waters on which we are today. I'd also like to recognize that I myself am coming in from Atlantic Canada, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoqiyik, Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, and Abenaki nations, or the Wabanaki Confederacy, as well as Innu and Inuit peoples. I am in Mi'kmaqi, which is the territory of the Mi'kmaq, comprising of present-day Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and parts of Quebec. I myself am in New Brunswick. And of course, it includes Newfoundland and Maine. The Mi'kmaq have been connected to these lands and waters for thousands of years and continue to be so in the present. This moment also reminds us that the 634 different First Nation communities, the 53 Inuit communities, and 8 Métis settlements across this nation all have a very unique historical, cultural, and spiritual, as well as environmentally sustainable connection to this incredible land that their people and ancestors have inhabited since time immemorial. So we'd like to take this moment to encourage all Canadians and visitors to these lands to learn about and regularly acknowledge the historic and current relationships that exist between the unceded land, for again, which we live on and prosper and enjoy, and the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also encourage all Canadians to consider how they can personally contribute to Canada's reconciliation with Indigenous people. We're all here joining from Indigenous land, and I invite you to reflect on this prompt from Naomi Sayers. If you are a non-Indigenous person and think land acknowledgements aren't enough, or you want to do something more or better, start describing your relationship to the land. Where did your family come? How did you end up here today? And what did you benefit, lose, or gain? And so, with that, and a beautiful moment of contemplation, again, I welcome you all graciously here this evening with us. I should have probably put the land acknowledgement page on while I did that beautiful song and dance. But I do want to acknowledge that my name, again, is Ashley Anthony. I'm the education and engagement manager, transitioning into the communications and engagement special projects manager. I've been here with Climate Reality for the past 4 years, and I'm very grateful to be able to talk with you tonight about disinformation. I am joined by Jennifer Nathan, who is a wonderful partner in all of this and the creator behind the Disinformation Detectives. Jennifer is a teacher, climate educator, and of course, a stand up advocate from New Westminster. British Columbia. And so, if you were with us during our Vancouver training at the beginning of the year, you have got a sneak peek into what we're going to be talking about this evening. So, with that, I graciously again hand it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, please.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Okay, I'm going to just do a screen share here. And can everyone see this, I hope?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited about this. I actually taught a unit on climate change for grade 10, I think quite a few years ago. It only lasted in the curriculum for a couple of years and then sort of vanished. But the whole time I'm trying to teach the science of climate change, my students were inundated with ads and disinformation and all these documentaries with incorrect science all around us. So I kind of put this together. I'm so glad you're here, and you might be wondering why I do this workshop and how do you know you're the one to do it. So I'll walk you through why, yes, I want you to do it, and you are the right people to be doing this. So this is from a report that came out, you can tell before the year 2000, but it says, how bad it's going to be. We're running out of time, but there's still time to save the world. Catastrophic consequence of, and they talk about coal, oil, and gas. It's going to influence the climate on the earth so much by the year 2000. It's going to mark changes beyond local or even national efforts. And it actually says we need to get off fossilized transportation. So I don't know if you have any guesses on who said this or what year they said this. So we know before the year 2000. Pretty dire, pretty consequential words. Guess it's hard to get feedback on Zoom, but it was actually said by the president of the American Petroleum Institute, and he said it in 1965. So in fact, it was the oil companies that knew probably more about the science than anyone else. They had some of the world's best scientists working on it, and they knew the situation. So we've known about it well longer than that, and we've known we've needed to act. But at the same time, there was so much profit from this industry, they actually made a decision to disinform around the science, make it confusing, and sadly have delayed governments acting on this for many, many, many decades. So we just finished another COP conference. This is up to the 24th one. So burning fossil fuels is like adding CO2 like a faucet in a bathtub. It's cumulative, doesn't really, over the years. And we were adding it 0.9 parts per million per year back in the 60s and 70s, and then turned it up to 1.3, 1.5, 2. So we keep not turning the tap down, we keep turning the tap up. And sadly, in the last few COPs, it's gone up even further from 2.5 parts per million a year. I think the last 2 years it's been about 3.5. It's kind of scary stuff where we're heading. So, which resulted in the 10 hottest years on record for the last 10. We're now starting to see these possible tipping points. The 1.5 special report actually said that we would lose most of the coral reefs at 1.5 and all of them at 2, and we're starting to see that. A researcher in the Antarctic talked about this, was just posted a week or so ago. The outlook is grim. We're starting to see destabilizing parts of the ice sheet, increasing the committed long-term rise in global mean sea level by more than 3 meters. So now we're talking about billions of people being impacted by that. But you're probably like me when you talk to your neighbors and your friends and you read and you see in the media and what's presented in the media, we're not getting that story. So the public narrative is so different from scientific reality. So it's definitely, I think, this disinformation, these campaigns to control the narrative that have delayed the actions that we've been needing for all those decades. I don't know if any of you know, this goes, a new documentary just out on Netflix called The White House Effect. I think it just came out a week or so ago. And it actually walks through that whole brief moment when they came close to acting back in the, I think, early 90s, and then decided not to. So you see that documented here. And it's not just the United States. In Canada, we also had climate research shut down. We had scientists fired. The ones that were left were muzzled. Like you couldn't go to a conference and talk without having a PR person there. So actually, these were scientists in Ottawa in 2012 with a coffin of evidence. It was a death of evidence rally. So, it's not that easy to get the message on the science out there. Now, just in the last year, we had a sort of bombshell report from the International Energy Agency, and they're saying, really, if we want to keep emissions from going past 1.5, there must be no new fossil infrastructure, no more exploration, no new pipelines. We need to phase down all three: coal, oil, and gas. That was like 2022, so it should have been done then. And you can see that this is not like, oh, let's keep going until 2050 and then drop off then. This is like start cutting it down, phasing it down now. And of course, we haven't been doing that. And this is just in the news on CBC today that there's support for another pipeline between Alberta out through BC. So we seem to be going in the opposite direction no matter who we elect. We just keep promoting fossil fuels. So these are the kind of topic points that get out in public. You get the extremes. Global warming's not even happening. That all this stuff that we're witnessing of the ice melting, we're losing the glaciers. No, they're growing. More Arctic ice than we've ever known. So we keep getting this contradictory information from what the reality is. We get that it's not us causing all this. It's the sun. It's such a trace gas. It can't be CO2 doing this. Well, it was high in the past, so don't worry about it. Or the climate impacts won't be bad. So one of our evidence boards is for this person from Victoria who is globally responsible for promoting all this information about how polar bears are doing just fine. In fact, you'll find that actual polar bear scientists did a report that her influence was ruining their work and the actual science. Or CO2 is plant food. I think a bunch of our deniers say that. That climate solutions won't work, that it's bad for the economy, that we can just adapt, that fossil fuels are plentiful, cheap, and we can always go to nuclear. So we get all these things that keep us from getting to the solutions. And that you can't trust the science anyway, that it's not a consensus, that you can't trust the models, that it's just alarmism to be concerned about it, and those scientists are just doing it for the money. My goodness. I don't know if you know, but if you work on an IPCC report, that's voluntary. So these poor scientists are actually working for free in a lot of the international work they do. So all of those slides I just showed you came out from the Climate Action Against Disinformation group, CAD. And interestingly, I just found out they're having a workshop or a webinar coming up on December 9th. So if you just Google CAD and climate disinformation, that might be a good one to attend as well. And also, this is becoming like right up in the forefront in Canada, particularly. Environmental defense in Canada is coming out currently, right now as we speak, with the Big Oil Playbook. So I think a lot of the stuff in the workshop I'm doing covers this as well. So how the ads and greenwashing are everywhere. So we get influenced by this almost daily. How they sponsor things in our schools and parks and community centers and culture, etc. How they get into classrooms and really want to make sure that they influence young people early, that they get people to be on board with spreading their messages for them. So it's pretty hard in Alberta to not be a fan of oil and gas. So you have to wear I love oil shirts, etc. That they don't message directly from the fossil fuel companies. They use think tanks and front groups and astroturf groups, all of these fake citizens groups to message for them. They have tons of them. They pop up all the time. They manipulate municipal politics. I'll talk about that in a sec as well. And then lobbyists. So it's even during the pandemic, there's thousands of lobby contacts between fossil interests and our members of parliament. In fact, some of them members of parliament become the lobbyists and some of the lobbyists become members of parliament. So it's kind of a revolving door between the two. And then again, this is happening in Canada still, is kind of fake solutions. So we say we can increase fossil production by using carbon capture, making it clean, which again, this is not really technology that we know will work. And most of the emissions, we are a pretty high exporter of oil and gas, and we don't count the emissions from when it's burned, and you can't get that out of the air, and that's like 85% of the emissions. So we kind of ignore that part. And the renewables downplaying what they're worth and what they can do. So just kind of introduce you to some of the big groups that are influencing our ability to get to climate solutions in Canada. So you've heard of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I don't know if you've heard of the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change. So this was started by the Heartland Institute. So you've probably heard of them. They're American. They're one of the authors of Project 2025. They have a huge amount of fossil money, and you just have to go to Wikipedia and you see, they have a ton of money to spread disinformation. They've been doing it for a long time. In fact, they were the ones that went against cigarette smoking. So, they use the same PR groups and sometimes even the same scientists to get across the anti-climate message. Actually, and in the workshop that you'll be doing, you can talk about how they actually had enough money to send climate disinformation to every science teacher in all of the United States. Pretty scary stuff. In Canada, we're not free of that. We have a group called Friends of Science, which are sort of enemies of actual science. Again, just go to Wikipedia, tell you it's funded by the fossil fuel industry. They're pretty bold. They say we don't do anything to impact climate change. It's just the sun. So it's sort of an absurd place to start. And yet they are connected to all the disinformation people that are on our evidence boards. Now, getting to municipal politics, this is a legitimate group. ICLEI, they work with our municipalities across Canada to get climate solutions. How do you enact them in our municipal governments? Well, boom, now we got we have this group that popped up since I started this workshop last year that kind of stole the name and the logo, but it works to stop climate actions in all the municipalities across Canada. And they use AI to send out kind of localized information to every municipality. And it's had some impact. We'll get to that in a sec. When I looked at their material, really the only source of all their information they want to give to council is this book called Energy and Climate at a Glance, Canadian edition, and it doesn't take too long. There it is, right on the front cover, Heartland Institute. But then if you look at the other author, Ron Davison, he is the head of Friends of Science. So here's some evidence of those two working together. And if you look at their table of contents, it's really the opposite of what our poor scientists are trying to say. So they say we shouldn't work on bringing down emissions at all. It'll hurt our economy. It'll sacrifice our economy. And also, why would you do it? Because there is no climate crisis, that CO2 doesn't control the temperature. Warming is, in fact, saving lives, which is what Bjorn Lomborg says as well, another one of our evidence board people. And warming is good for civilization. So it's the opposite of what the actual science is. I attended one of their cross-Canada meetings. They had 70 people, so way more than are here, sadly. And they were all very invested in working with their local municipalities to stop wasting money on climate action. And again, because these groups have money, they're able to have a paid person that's going to work with them to most effectively work with the city councils. So it's kind of scary stuff. I don't know if you've heard of DSmog. There are a fabulous group that was started in Vancouver specifically to call out the deniers and get all the information on them. And they also do some investigative journalism. And they were the first ones to kind of talk about what this group was doing across Canada, flooding city councils with climate disinformation. And here in BC, it actually stopped a municipality from doing the good work that they were doing to reduce emissions from new buildings. So they brought in stricter building codes, and then all this disinfo was a council meeting with more disinformation than real information, and they voted to slow that work down, to work against it. So this stuff is having an impact. And it's making a difference across Canada. Like, this is scary stuff. So belief in climate change primarily caused by humans has gone down. So now it's 63% when it was 71% in 2021. Support for oil and gas is critical to our economy. That's rising, probably with the Trump tariffs, et cetera. But it's 70%. That's gone up from 11% from last year. And then as a science teacher, this breaks my heart. Only 49, less than half of Canadians know that it's the burning of fossil fuels as the main driver of climate change. So, trust in media has dropped, but it's still not changing how people are getting their information and what they're believing. So we're not in a very good place, which is another reason why I think calling out the disinformation is incredibly important. The other thing is that people are resistant to change. Even if I say these changes are really going to make your life a lot better, if we take out a parking lane and put in a bike lane, everyone will be much happier. You'll if you bike to work instead of drive, it's like the same chemicals in your body is falling in love. Like imagine feeling that every day. And yet we get backlash against bike lanes. If you're in Ontario, you know about that. And then now, because of the Trump government being a real, slash and burn, drill baby drill, you have people within government now amplifying and putting into government reports this disinformation. So one of the people for our evidence boards is Judith Curry. She was one of the authors of this Department of Energy report that came out in the summer. Ryan Kratz-Rosien is a Canadian scientist who was actually one of the ones that debunked this. And he said, these are all those common climate skeptic tropes that have been rebutted for years and years. Here it was in an official government report, quite terrifying. And all 5 of these authors, sadly one Canadian, though it doesn't take very long, you just take a quick look, and they're all intimately connected with the Heartland Institute. So we know there are fossil messaging. They will never, ever, ever change their minds, no matter how much climate science we learn. Because Ross McKittrick is Canadian, he's of course also connected with Friends of Science and the Fraser Institute, which is another group that is fossil funded, always messages pro fossils. So, although that report came out in the States, it was written about in Canada. The rejection of climate alarmist worldview has major implications for Canada. We need to reject the UN-centric climate alarmed worldview. So again, being concerned about climate makes you an alarmist in media view. And it was written by Kenneth P. Green. So Kenneth Green is with the Fraser Institute. So in 2014, I heard him on CBC saying we shouldn't be worried about climate change. So I wrote to him and said, I know that's your job, but what if you were to come to my classroom and face my students, young people? What would you say to them? And he wrote me back. And it took me a long time to sort of understand what he was trying to say, why he was saying it. And so I thought this is a really good way to start the workshop. So you do a little bit of an intro into what this letter is, and then get people working on one of these 5 different disinformation denier type people. So the letter introduces the idea of front groups like Fraser Institute that fund this fake science. It introduces the talking points that they use, that you can't trust the climate models, that CO2 is not creating a problem, that it won't be very bad if it does, etc. The idea that these fake experts have access to corporate media, and they really stick to these unscientific talking points over decades and decades. And they get away with it because they put it in the paper with opinion at the top. So that means you can lie about the science and not get legally sued for it. So these are the 5 deniers that will be part of the workshop. I hope you had a chance to take a look at the evidence boards, which all been lovely digitized by Ashley. So you can see we have 3 Canadians. Susan Crockford, she's our polar bear person who's convinced the world that polar bears are fine. Judith Curry is the American that was one of the authors of that Department of Energy report, insistent that CO2 is not a problem. You may have heard of Bjorn Lomborg. He was in the news like just in the last few weeks. Bill Gates, you might have heard, gave him about $3.5 million and started to say, oh, climate change, it won't be that bad. We don't have to, and he had promised to bring down his corporate emissions fairly quickly. Now, we know that data centers use a lot of energy. So I think he's trying to get out of his own promises to reduce emissions by using Bjorn Lomborg's arguments about, we can delay. And then our last 2 are Patrick Moore and Ian Clark. They're both Canadian. Both have had their hands in a lot of stuff. You might have heard of Patrick Moore. His thing is that he was one of the founders of Greenpeace. So he uses that for cachet, but he's been doing over 30 years of work for extractive industry and pushing that kind of stuff. So these are what the evidence boards look like. It's just snippets of articles that start to get the connections that all of these have in common. So it's not just the talking points that they have, but who's echoing them? Who is giving them space? You can see, you probably have heard of Jordan Peterson. He is that Canadian psychology prof that got into trouble for going against gendered pronouns and has become the darling of podcasts now. He has over 8.5 million subscribers, over 1 million people watched his interview with Judith Curry. He's a huge climate denier and has a lot of global influence. He's now got an international group working against climate action. But you see all these people have popped up on Jordan Peterson's podcasts. There's Judith Curry doing 5-minute videos for PragerU. So that is an American group that, like Trump University, is not a real university. And they just want to influence young people to be on board for fossil fuels. So Bjorn Lomborg's done a bunch of videos for them. Patrick Moore has done a bunch of videos for them. And now I think 6 states have approved showing these videos to classrooms, that if teachers want, they can use them as approved curriculum. So we're starting to get into crazy zone. Here in BC, we had an election last year, and the Conservative Party lost by just a hair, not by very much. And they had in their platform that they would ban the teaching of climate science in schools. He actually got kicked out of the Liberal Party of BC because he retweeted a Patrick Moore tweet of climate denial. And that party, which is quite right-wing in the province, had said, well, we still believe in climate change. And then that party folded and the Conservatives almost got in. So kind of scary territory. Now, if you want to hear the general tone of PragerU videos, here's a small clip, snippet from one of their videos.
Fossil fuels won't prevent doomsday. It will cause it. Worldwide poverty, mass starvation, and the end of civilization as we know it. If you want to live like the Flintstones and spend your life doing back-breaking labor from dawn to dusk just to feed yourself, be my guest. Me, I'll take my chances with fossil fuels.
So that's the general attitude of all the videos on there. But no matter which denier you get on your evidence board, when you come together as a group afterwards and talk, you'll find out they all try to have outreach to education. They all have influence through corporate media. They all have been on Fox News. They've all written something for Wall Street Journal. And then we'll find out that Fox News, what we know, is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Well, so is Wall Street Journal. So he is a climate denier, owns both of them, and uses them to spread disinformation, again, under that opinion heading. Post Media, most papers in Canada are actually owned by an American hedge fund with ties to Trump. So you get almost daily disinformation from them. There's also like Western Standard, Rebel News, the think tanks, the front groups, again, they're all associated with the Heartland Institute, Friends of Science, AstroTurf groups, influencers. Most of them have given testimony to government bodies. A lot of pro-fossil messaging winds up at parliamentary committees in Canada. So, we almost need to be aware of that they are not following the science at all. All these disinformers do blogs, they do reports that are put out by other front groups. So they're all echo chambers of each other. You can find they're all connected, very quickly connected. And they all write books. So none of them do peer-reviewed climate science in and respectful journals, but they have every other way of getting out there that they can. So the books thing is interesting because you don't want to ban books, but they're all available in our public libraries. So that's another kind of question. So the UN Special Rapporteur this summer came out with a report saying, if we want to make progress on climate, we have to criminalize fossil fuel disinformation and ban lobbying, which I think we really, really need. But, they're so powerful. I don't even know if you heard about this. It was dismissed pretty quickly. So how do you make this legitimate? How do we get this to actually happen? The other thing that happened was the International Court of Justice ruled that countries, and it was unanimous, like 29 judges, that we must act on climate as a responsibility that countries must follow. So, hopefully legal cases will start to make a difference. I don't know if you're aware that the youth in Canada took their government to court. It's a charter case that they're not acting on climate enough to protect their future. And that court case is coming up in Vancouver next October. So you can zoom into that. So that's another thing that can maybe start to turn this story around. So hopefully, once people have done this workshop, they'll understand that there are people who have chosen as their job to undermine climate action. They're dug in, they're intentional, motivated, and they will never, ever, ever change their mind no matter how much evidence goes against their position. I hope they get paid a lot because that's the psychology that's really hard to understand. People will understand that they will be associated with income supported directly or indirectly from fossil interests, usually through these think tanks or astroturf groups. And you don't have to know much. You don't have to have a huge background in any of this to do this workshop. Really, if you just see that people are connected to the Heartland Institute or Friends of Science, we know their fossil interests and we know why they're doing what they're doing. You can do a quick check on DSMOG to see the connections, but Wikipedia gives you that as well. You can start to understand the patterns of the AstroTurf group, think tank, corporate media, social media, et cetera, that amplify the messaging. And we can be empowered to actually do some lobbying ourselves on the side of actual climate science. It's really our responsibility as citizens to not let all of that messaging go unchallenged. We shouldn't have politicians that buy into the disinformation. And we can also empower people to push their Minister of Education to make sure that was part of the Paris Agreement, was that we educate our citizens on the actual climate science. So if we get real, climate literacy in schools, you inoculate young people from all this disinformation. That's so much easier than trying to unlearn it once you've gone down those rabbit holes. So that's a big part of it as well. And so going back to why should you do this workshop and how do you know you're the one to do it? If this kind of angers you that this stuff has been so influential, then I'd love for you to take this workshop on and have fun with it because people get to explore the evidence boards themselves. It's really just, and I've found it's very effective at people getting to that position of understanding all of this very quickly. And it works just by looking at these snippets, the obvious connections, the obvious calling out of it. So I really hope you take a look. I'm really excited that you're here tonight, and I hope that you'll take this on. So Ashley, I'm going to kind of pass it on to you now. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm on a double mute. That's what's
There you go.
happening. I have children and we have fail safe. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jennifer. That was always incredible. I appreciate everything. I feel like every time I watch you present, I continue to learn something. So I hold deep gratitude for that. This is again the creation and fruition of all of Jennifer's work. Obviously, she's well informed on what we were talking about, and she used to do these by printing all of these articles out individually and pasting them on a big poster board and bringing them into schools and bringing them into public spaces. So we have digitized everything, all of the resources here and more for your use. And so the best way to start this package, if you, again, don't have this yet, I will drop it in the chat once my little chat button reappears. It does not want to reappear right now. It reappeared when I went to the bottom of the screen. Thanks, chat button. We'll get there. Either way, the recording for this and the information package will be sent to you after we're done here as well. So the best place to start is this full facilitation guide that says start here right across the top. And this facilitation guide has everything that you need to put this workshop together. So it has a brief table of contents so that you can easily navigate it and make sure that you're finding what you're looking for very quickly. And of course, a good old Al Gore quote, let's empower people like our world depends on it, because it does. A note of gratitude for everybody who is going to be embarking on this and some information behind why we do this, like the history of climate disinformation, and a guide on how to do land acknowledgements. So we advise everybody to go to nativeland.ca and you can follow this QR code. So this is printable. And if you had this package and had to give it to somebody, there are a few QR codes in here that lead you back to this Google Drive file, and everybody will be able to access the information. Our goal is to have this publicly accessible so that as many people as we can get to do it will be able to facilitate this in their communities. And of course, that Naomi Sayers quote that we started with, if you're a non-Indigenous person and think land acknowledgements aren't enough, or you want to do something or more, describe your relationship to the land. Where did your family come from? How did you end up here today? And what did you benefit, lose, or gain? We also have an overview here. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see a larger view of the page. This overview has all of the equipment that you need and a bit of a brief checklist before you start so that you can make sure and ensure that you are prepared every time. And then it also has the activity instructions in here as well. There is another printable copy if you wanted to print out individual pages to leave them on tables. Something that I want to bring your attention to is that we have an agenda sample here. This is for a 2.5 hour, or no, this is for, yeah, a 2.5 hour presentation. This is adaptable to be anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, depending on how much time you spend on discussion and how much time you spend on the activity. We also have a very extensive FAQ section. So if you do run into a question, this is a great place to start first. I'm not going to go through all of the FAQs with you. I invite you to do that yourself, but it is lengthy and we do have general questions, setup of materials, running the workshop, content and context, as well as follow-up and impact. If there are questions that you stumble upon, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can include them in the FAQ for future use. And then, of course, this is probably the most important page here because this workshop content list is actually the tree that will help you discern where all of the resources are within the Google Drive file. So you'll like say that you want the curriculum resources and you're looking for curriculum inquiry projects. You'll be able to find that in the curriculum resources under the additional resources within the large resource folder. So this will be your way to easily navigate the folder if you get lost. And this is the QR code that will always bring you back to this Google Drive folder. So if you did anything and just printed out this, you will always have access to this Google Drive folder and will always bring you back to here. Of course, we have information about our organization and an acknowledgement for Jennifer's outstanding work. Yeah, so this is our facilitation guide. And again, it's where I would advise you to start first when we're looking at this whole Google Drive. Outside of that, we have the slide deck and speaking notes. So this is not the same slide deck that Jennifer has just gone through. This is a very extensive, fully developed slide deck. I can't show you the profile. Oh, is it going to? No, it's too large, but you can download it and look at it and have a localized copy. It's completely editable. You can regionalize and customize it and update it as you go. And we are going to continue more updated copies, like updated releases as time goes on. And of course, the plot thickens, for a lack of a better phrase. Something else that we have here as well is fully tailored speaking notes. So again, we have an overview of the setup here. And then we have a copy of the agenda for you. But we also have fully developed slide-by-slide speaking notes that you can follow verbatim, or you can, again, adapt, ingest, and do with on your own. This is not meant to be a strict adherence, but a guidance to help you build confidence in your facilitation of this topic and get comfortable with the information. We also have the activity assignment on its own. If you wanted to print this out and leave this on tables for people to have while you're doing the activity, some people like a textile copy. We tried to make this as easy as possible for you when you're out in your communities to be able to facilitate this without honestly a lot of effort outside of learning the materials. So within this, we also have a couple of recordings. This is the recording of the presentation example. So I call it the presentation inspiration. If you want to watch the presentation in full before you actually go out and do the presentation, the wonderful Jennifer Nathan has lent us her skills and she has recorded herself facilitating this. There are times where she speaks out and gives you facilitation tips as well. The recording for this will be included in here. And we pre-released this to the Vancouver trainees in July, and that recording is here as well. So anything that you need, any recordings will be uploaded in here, and they bring you to a YouTube file, so you'll be able to access it. There's no downloading, no having to store it locally on your computer. Additional resources that we have. So we have a template for feedback surveys. We have both a feedback survey for the facilitators and we have a feedback survey for participants. But I think the most incredible part here is all of the resources that we have included in this. So, of course, we have our digital evidence boards. And as I wonderfully and anecdotally led to earlier, we have the old school OG copies as well. So each of these files have all of the clippings and sources that are used on the digital evidence boards. So you can print out, if you needed to, every single one of these individually and post it on a poster board if you would like, or you can utilize these resources to talk deeper about the sources and their entirety with the people that you're facilitating with. And then, of course, we have our digital evidence boards, which I highlighted in green to make it easier for everybody to access. And now this is actually a how-to guide on how to access the template. So it will give you step-by-step instructions on how to make a local copy for yourself that's completely customizable. So you never have to worry if you have messed up the original board or if you've fiddled around with something and you're worried you broke something. This goes through how to download the copy, how to change QR codes, how to do whatever you need to do. And it has a number of links here. So we have a number of editions of the board. We have the full facilitator edition. This is, I would say, the teacher copy. It has all the answers already included to help you draw those connections, especially your first couple of times round. Then we have a version of the big board that's blank and doesn't necessarily have all of those things filled out. So if you were doing this with like a university class or a college class, you'd be able to get them to fill this out and it would elevate the advancedness of the material. And then each of the climate deniers or delayists have their own individual board as well. Sometimes when you have all of this information on one board, it takes a lot to load. And for people that are in rural areas, that loading might cause issues. Or if, again, you're trying to separate and have groups, each of these boards can be worked on individually. What I'm really excited to show you is the board itself. Now, Jennifer let the cat out of the bag a little bit in her presentation, but we're really excited about this. And so we have Patrick Moore, we have Bjorn, we got Ian, we got Susan, and we got Madam Curry over here. And so we have instructions in the center of the board as well. And I'll go through a couple of the additional resources that we've added. First, we'll zoom into the instructions, and that's all you have to do. There's a toggle here on the bottom and toggles on the side so that you can navigate, right? And then it has all the same instructions that are on the handout. So you don't have to worry. You can zoom in a lot or you can zoom out a lot. So if you're facilitating on a smart board or something like that, this is very adaptable. Even if you're projecting onto a screen, you'll be able to gauge the intensity of the size of the material that you're looking at. Something else that we included here was this resource. So this resource, let me just zoom in. This resource here goes through the facts, fakes, and climate science. It's an expandable resource that allows you. So if you wanted to, again, go deeper into the knowledge, all of this you can go through and it expands. It doesn't want to expand on mine right now because I'm on the local copy. But when you guys make your own copy, you'll be able to utilize all of this. Something else that we have are these wonderful, I'll go down to Judith. Wonderful QR codes everywhere, all over this. So I'll draw your attention to a couple of them. Some of these are source QR codes. So they will bring you directly to the source of the material, where we got this. Some of these also have like fast forward times. So if you were leading you to a recording or a video, we give you small little tidbits on where to fast forward to for their greatest hits of disinformation. Some of these, like here, we have, again, Judith Curry talking on Jordan Peterson's podcast, and the first clip that this QR code will take you to has the quote right here as well. So you can drive that attention there and you can encourage multimedia use in your classroom. We also have some added bonus ones that don't necessarily go to any of these, but are really delightful to watch. And I want to, before I move to the next one, draw your attention to my favorite quote in this entire board right here. Would you like to talk about it, Jennifer, for a moment?
Well, just there was a youth trial in Montana. The government, or so the youth in Montana was saying that their government wasn't acting on climate. And the government was going to call Judith Curry as a witness, which is horrifying because you think in a courtroom, you have to stick to facts. So the climate scientists for the kids just shredded her. So they ended up pulling her and she didn't. But anyway, so she said in her deposition, she confirmed she had never conducted research. This isn't her deposition, a legal document. She had never conducted research or even reviewed scientific studies in Montana's climate. Her credibility, she said, derived as her skills as a fast reader, a great Googler, and finder of information who can assimilate a lot of information. So I don't know, kind of embarrassing. So this is, I think, there's so many clips on here that expose them as being pretty embarrassing very quickly. So what's fun is to watch people kind of really quickly come to the realization of how terrible these people are, really. And it's kind of fun because they're now inoculated. Like, the job's done and it doesn't really take that long to do it. Anyway, thanks, Ashley.
No, it's a beautiful one. It makes me laugh every single time. And you get to learn about things like gish galloping and new terms that you never thought of. So I personally have learned so much within this experience of creating this Disinformation Detectives. Something else that I want to bring your attention to is this additional tool that we have invited in here. So again, you can get people to follow this QR code and it brings you to Tortoise's hot air. So Tortoise Media identified almost 300 online actors that post about climate change in ways that range from skepticism to outright misinformation. And so they essentially look through all of these different speaking points, some of those that Jennifer talked about earlier in her presentation, some of those that remind us of the COVID days, and some of those we just hear and just question, like climate lockdowns are coming. And so when we hit this, we can see like when these things are posted, the types of statements that they're making. So is it about denial? Is it about delay? Or is it about control? And so they use these manipulative talking statements to coerce people into believing their misinformation and disinformation and really use the crux of people's fear against them. And so this helps us look at different material and how it relates to these delay, deny, and control statements. So that's always an interesting and fun one to go through as well. Yeah, so these are our boards, our evidence boards, and we're very excited for you to be able to utilize these in your own communities. And if you have any questions or concerns or apprehensions or comments about them, we are all ears, because all we want to do is continue to improve this and ensure that it is adaptable and gets into as many hands and as many communities as possible. Something else that I want to bring your attention to outside of the digital evidence boards and that letter from Kenneth P. Green that Jennifer received a few years ago, that's here. It has wide enough margins so that people can comment on it as well. So it's really workable. But we also have all of these additional resources. If you get lost in the sauce, remember that our resource, like our tree of how to navigate this, is in the facilitation guide. But we have additional facilitation support. So we actually, Janet and I have been working on conflict mitigation and de-escalation. We have delay statements. So media front groups, AstroTurf groups, Canadian and international. So if you're like, this all came at me like drinking from a fire hose, I don't know any of the people that she just talked about. Here's a number of media outlets, front groups, AstroTurf groups, international ones as well, that you can go through and make yourself familiar. Again, here's the Heartland Institute, the Institute of Public Affairs in Australia. Like there's a few of these, and some of these are very surprising. So if you want to make yourself familiar with all of those, and we have some key context here as well, this is a great resource. And we have general delay statements that are used. So similar to what Tortoise Media had been identifying in the media that they had captured, these are general delay statements that people are using. Fossil fuels like LNG are necessary for transition energy source, right? We hear that all the time. Or climate alarmists are fear mongering to push this political agenda. In these, we also have scientific rebuttals. So if you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to go deer in the headlights and I have no idea how to navigate conflict within these are statements that you can use and become familiar with. Such as the term alarmist mischaracterizes scientists, right? Like these are academically supported. And we do have a reference list as well for debunking. So if people are telling you, all the NOAA stuff or food and agriculture stuff, like we have a whole bunch of support here for you. Within this, we have other additional resources. So if you're a teacher, of course, as Jennifer is, she's created this wonderful list of inquiry projects by subject. So there's a navigatable panel here on the side that can bring you fast track. So look at this, developing a climate science lesson plan. Or I want to do something that's an English inquiry project. Let's write a news article, and it'll bring you directly to where you need to go. And we have science, English, social studies, and art, as well as some additional notes for teachers to support those who feel unsupported within or unknowledgeable about this topic. Yeah, and we're very excited. And of course, the commonalities between the 5 deniers. So this is a bit of what Jennifer was talking about again in her presentation. As soon as you start to identify who these people are, you start to see the ties that bind. And so this essentially is a short list of again, different things that bring them together. So they use the same talking points, they attend the same conferences and events, the same publications on outlets, the same podcasts and interviews, TV station, media appearances, the same type of professional backgrounds. And again, this is to help not overwhelm you, but to build your understanding about the topic. You can use as much or as little as you need, whenever and wherever you need. And you can share these to support the people that you are working with. With that, the last thing that I want to show you before we kind of start to move into a question and answer period is the communications package. So, the one thing that we know from working with community groups and individual champions is that sometimes we are not a master of all things. And if you've mastered presenting, the communication, especially digital communication assets, can sometimes feel overwhelming. And so, our incredible communications team has worked to create essentially a communications toolkit that will help fast track any type of digital marketing or even personal marketing that you're trying to do. So, we have a bunch of different examples here for you. We have social media posts as well as social media templates. So these are completely, I'm gonna have to go on. Yeah, open an editor. It knew who I was. Essentially, you can download these, and these are all completely customizable for you. So you can put your date, your time, your location, a picture that represents your work, and you can use all of these for your own personal social media outreach so that you don't have to worry about all of the digital assets. And we have a couple of them to choose from. So we have a square version and the rectangle version. We also have sample email and newsletter blurbs. We have website and event page content, so you don't have to worry about putting that together. We also have a sample template for a poster or a flyer if you'd like to distribute that in your community. And so this allows you, again, to just plug and play all of these. You can add your email address, you can add your additional logo, you can add your location. All of this is completely customizable and adaptable. So when you access it, you create your own copy, just like the facilitation boards, and you don't have to worry about messing up the original one. We also have some additional talking points if you're doing community outreach, as well as additional web page examples and additional social media examples. So again, you just have to plug and play here. Add your date, add your time, add your location, and you can just simply share it. We wanted to make these packages as easy for everyone as possible to reduce the amount that you have to invest in it, and again, to further the amount of impact. If we make this easy, then hopefully people will be able to access it. Yeah, but that kind of summarizes the navigation of our workshop in a box here. And again, just remember, start here is your friend. With that, if you have any questions, we would love to listen to them, whatever you need to. Oh, I have somebody in the. Okay, there we go.
Just let them in. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, now is the perfect time. Will this drive be maintained and remain available? Are we expected to download all of these files and save them locally? Okay, so the Airtable file, that the Airtable form that people are filling out is a trial right now. I'm not going to lie to you. And it usually takes about a half hour for it to deliver. But I can share with you locally this link and you can save it. As for the material on here, you don't have to worry about updating it. We are going to continue to update it. And our next update point is going to be the end of March, the beginning of April. We're looking at doing updates in the spring and fall to make sure that we add in all of the accumulative information. You at that point will be told that there is a new update, and then you'll be able to re-download the file. This file will remain on this drive publicly accessible. And like I said, there are ways to circumvent the Airtable. All you have to do is have that file or have the QR code from the facilitation guide. So if you don't want to download a local copy, you can always just save that PDF and you'll be able to access it whenever you need.
So hopefully it doesn't sound too complicated. Just play around with it. I'm not technologically brilliant, but it's once you start playing around with it, it becomes self-evident, I think, I hope.
Yeah. And our goal is to continue to offer skill building sessions on your facilitation soft skills that support the delivery of this and other workshop in a box packages to come. We hope that we get to expand all of the offerings that we have. The next one that we are working on is going to be about divestment in pension funds, stemming from a lot of the work that has happened in Quebec and talking about sustainable investment. Obviously, that's a bit of a different audience. But that's just saying that there are others that are planned that are coming down the pipeline as well. So this will hopefully be the off. There will be a recording. The recording for this will be distributed tomorrow morning into everybody's email box. And the recording link will be updated on the recordings folder within the Google Drive. So you'll be able to access the link through the email that we send you and access the link tomorrow through the Google Drive link that you have. Any other questions? Are these materials included, the deniers, delayer boards, available in other regions, or is this a Climate Reality Canada only initiative? That's a great question. I would say that a lot of the material that we have here could be adopted really easily or adapted really easily to the United States. As for other countries, we would have to, like, there are other branches and we could work to help them prepare something similar, but the people who are their public speakers may be different. So it's not quite as transversal as we would like it to be. Any other questions? And yes, Janet, it does mention the stuff that Shift is doing, the pension fund stuff. Well, wonderful. I think that we are at the top of the hour, and we did book everybody for 2 hours, but we got it done in one, which is the efficiency that I love. Jennifer, is there anything else that you would like to say before we let these wonderful people go?
Just hope that everyone dives in and gives it a try. So I'd love some feedback. Does it feel, does coming tonight motivate you to take this on, or are you feeling a little overwhelmed?
That's a great question. And we will have a Airtable survey. Both. That's a valid answer, Christina. We have an Airtable survey, and it's not one of these leading surveys as well. It's more of like a general catch-all. So you can give us your feedback type and any type of feedback that you want to give us. We're all ears because we want to continuously improve this and make sure that we can extend its impact. I'll also offer additional hours to support anybody who's looking to facilitate. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, apprehensions, you can always reach out to me. You can take tidbits and pieces for your social media and newsletter. That's totally fine. Just make sure that you're sourcing it. Draw as much attention to us as you can so that we can share it widely. Yeah, Janet.
I have a question. A couple of questions actually. Once I start asking them, they're probably going to come out. So, the first thing is, coming back from, the reality of COP that just happened in Belém. Canada has signed on to a climate integrity, integrity of information, and so, as I heard about that, I started, amplifying this workshop on disinformation. So I'm wondering if, as part of the toolkit, you will be providing information on the declaration so we're aware of what Canada's commitments are and how this work actually directly aligns and supports the goals that our government has signed off.
That's a fantastic question. And I would say that that information will come in the March update, as well as all this, shade on Bill Gates and, just updates of all of the things that have happened from September. If we were to update this every time that something happens, we would be updating this daily. I have to say that Jennifer did update her slide deck today.
I haven't heard too much about that, Janet. I'm curious because right now that discourse is not happening in Canada. So we do not ever talk about fossil fuels and the link to climate. So, again, Canadians are not aware of our need to phase down and not ramp up fossil development. So,
No, so I was a little kind of shocked because I found it out through, I'm connected to somebody in the UN. So she's a staff person at the UN, and Jennifer, I'll give you this information. And so it was integrity of information related to COP, and there are 13 countries worldwide that have signed off. And this morning in my neighborhood, greetings from the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. And so I live 10 blocks from Parliament. And
wow.
in my neighborhood, there are some people. I'm a former executive with the federal government. My department was Environment and Climate Change Canada. And there are some other executives in my neighborhood. And I spoke with one this morning and referenced and he said, and what I learned was that that was a good thing that came out of COP, one of the few things, because most of what has been is visceral. It's it wasn't a fun time for the
No,
people who have been working in climate or environment
no.
for a short time or a long time. And so this is a declaration, and it's on integrity of information, and it came from COP, and the UN staff and communications were the ones who really, brought it forward as a need, and so it's new, very new, and so I just give that, those words out, and certainly I think. We can gather some information today. What I did actually, this is what I do sometimes when is I wrote the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and,
To
congratulated her
Brucein?
on
Yeah.
this being done. And I let her know about this disinformation um, detective facilitator session, and that they ought to amplify this because it's a Canadian made and produced session. And if they wanted information, they could follow up. So they're now aware that Climate Reality Project Canada because they didn't know. Through the people that I know here in the neighborhood, they had no idea. So now they know.
Wow. That's amazing, Jen. Really wonderful to hear what you do. I know conferences under Harper, we used to get the NGO Colossal Fossil of the, award at these conferences. And I don't know if everyone's aware, we got it again at this one.
Yeah, we
So,
got a horrible award. Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah,
we're,
so this is something that's a different track.
mm,
So I'm pleased to raise the profile for Climate Reality Project Canada because I know that your work, Jennifer, I'd seen you in March. We're actually in this picture together on the page. I saw that. I saw that, Ashley. And you know, people are somewhat aware that these things happen in the academic world. During Climate Week, there were a few kind of things happening in Ottawa around that in September. But this is about, working with communities and, bringing in local information and, supporting people on our streets, right? To organize, to be able to understand this a little bit better and to realize the interrelationships, because
yeah.
that's what I got from your session this evening. So I just thought I'd mention that. It's the declaration on information integrity related
Integrity.
to COP.
I will
Yeah,
definitely
and
look that up.
so we'll
Thank
get
you.
in. Well, I think we can organize a file and put it up so people have it sooner than later, so we can
Yeah.
begin to inform ourselves. I'll help
Thank
with
you,
that.
Janet.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Was there any other questions? Please
Or
feel
few.
free to unmute as well. You don't have
Yeah,
to drop
please.
them in the
Yeah.
chat.
So the other question that I had was I was wondering if anybody had any questions about, the technology. Like those evidence boards are wonderful and they're all on that page. I have some kind of questions in me saying, how do I deal with that? I'm wondering if others are like wondering, how do I deal with that? And so I just thought I'd kind of offer that if anybody else raises their hands and maybe we could just review it another time.
Yeah, and I think that that's a valid question. Jennifer also had that same question of how do we do this? And that's why I created the step-by-step guide on how to create localized copies. But I can also lend my time and expertise to assist people in setting up their first workshops as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. Like, I have all this material and can help you customize it, help you get ready, help you use those templates, show you how to adjust those templates, because there's a couple of new platforms here. Canva is not something that everybody widely uses, right? We tried to use Google Drive because we found that that was probably widely the most applicable for people. But yeah, we're here to support you in all of those pain points, all those growth points, everything in between as well, because what we want is your success.
I was just gonna say, Ashley, I'm a big fan of watching a YouTube video rather than reading directions. I wonder if
So
you
you
could
want
make,
me to make a YouTube tutorial
yeah, if
video?
you
I
make
can
them,
add it into the
yeah.
yeah, I'll write that down. That's a
So
great
just
suggestion.
a little video of how to make your own copy is like so much easier for us visual
Yeah,
learners.
there, it's a different learning style, right? So, the written form is one, but others, especially today, more and more we're on our phones a lot and watching, movies and stories, right?
Perfect. I will add that tomorrow. Look at always coming away with new things to add. Any other questions?
No, I just want to say this is awesome. Well done. Amazingly organized. I look forward to diving in. Just talking about it that quickly was a fire hose, but I can see how well thought out it is, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'll be very transparent. Our biggest thing is the bind for time. We could talk about this all day with you, but unfortunately, people have jobs and lives. But if you want to, Rob, do you not? You're like,
But
I'm in the
no, but
top of
my
the day.
fear is if I'm into your drive and all of a sudden, oh, what I've done, I've erased everything. Yeah, I
You
mean, that's
won't
what
be
I
able
think
to.
still. Okay.
You won't be able to. This
What
is
happened? Yeah.
foolproof.
I've
Everything in there
ruined
is
Canada.
templates. Everything in there is like view only copies that you can
Okay.
download for yourself. There is nothing that you can do to mess up the file system.
All right. Okay.
You are good. And even if somebody did, I have additional copies of everything.
Okay.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to stop the recording.
And we'd love for you to go out and do the workshop and let us know how it goes. Like what would make it easier. Yeah, I think, you don't have to do a ton of prep really. Just figuring out how to get the evidence boards to people, boom, they'll do the work.